If you've had the vaccine, particularly if it's Pfizer or Moderna, you have this in you. If you had the PCR testing and you had that hydrogel that contained the graphene oxide, you have this in you. Once we realized that this is what we were facing, we were like, well, what are we going to do now?
I know you guys are able to find and remove some of these objects that are implanted in people, but with this newest stuff, you're saying it's at the nanoscale. So how are you going to remove stuff at the nanoscale?
With the nanotech, there is a solution, high-grade zeolite. Zeolite is usually found, and it's sourced at two locations, usually blue zones, areas where humans tend to live far longer and healthier. It has to have volcanic activity where the diatomaceous earth and the sea meet, and that's where they get this pure high-grade zeolite, which has a negative charge to it. When it's integrated into the human body, what it does is it binds to the graphene oxide, and so they've done studies now where they did a baseline, exposed people to the graphene oxide, and then what they see is that after about 90 days, it'll be down to a minimal level. Most people who are on this right now are saying they're having significant improvements in how they're feeling, the symptoms that they're getting, and it's and as much as over 50%.
Episode 25. My guest today is Trevor Millar. Trevor Millar is the co-founder of a psychedelic Ibogaine treatment center down in Tijuana, Mexico called Ambio. It's actually Ambio Life.
Ambio Life Sciences.
Ambio Life Sciences.
Ambio's fine.
So what makes this podcast so important to me and the listeners out there, I want you to understand, like, this treatment that Trevor is one of the leading experts and one of, like, the original guys that actually started doing this. This is groundbreaking stuff. So, like, if you or anybody you know is a veteran that is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, from traumatic brain injury, even into the regular civilian world, if you are you're a child that was abused, or you're a sex abuse victim, or even upwards into successful people, A-list actors and such, like Trevor is the guy that has worked with all of these different people from all different walks of life that are dealing with so many traumatic events. And he's the guy with one treatment at his clinic can bring you back to life. He can bring you back from the dead. And so that's why, if you're listening to this podcast and you're wondering if you want to sit through this, that is the reason. Like, this is very important stuff. And he's dealing with the whole legal side of everything and how he is going to skate around the laws, because every country is different. Every state's different. And so we need people like Trevor to basically, like, take the fight, take the brunt of all of this for us, and to be pushing this fight. And that's why I wanted to bring Trevor on today. Thank you for coming. Why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about yourself? Let's talk about your origin story and how you got into this.
Awesome. Thank you. Great intro.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here. I think the origin story as far as Ibogaine is concerned is I am Canadian. I grew up near Toronto but moved to Vancouver in the early 2000s. And after 9/11, which I find interesting because so many of the people that I work with now were inspired by 9/11 in different ways. But after 9/11, I was distraught with the state of the world, started looking for different ways that I might be able to give back. Vancouver, I was new to it at the time. It has a neighborhood called the Downtown East Side, which is the poorest postal code in Canada. And I just started poking around, looking at different ways that I could help out that neighborhood. And that basically turned into about a 10-year networking and research project. And then Ibogaine came on the radar as a way to potentially help. Ibogaine is a plant medicine. It is psychoactive or psychedelic. Psychedelic technically means mind or soul manifesting. And I think that is a very accurate description for these substances. Even though the term has a lot of baggage, I think we're still going to go with the word psychedelic because it's accurate. But it comes from, Iboga is a plant that comes from Central West Africa, countries like Gabon and Cameroon. It's been used ceremonially for centuries there. And then in the early 1960s, it was discovered that it was very good at treating addiction, opioid use disorder specifically. You can come off heroin virtually overnight without the painful withdrawals normally associated with that, with this drug. And I had heard of Iboga, but never really put two and two together that it might be a way to help this neighborhood until 2009. And then I decided...
Where did you hear about it? You're up in Canada. Where are you hearing about this in Canada?
Yeah, so I had relatively early exposure to psychedelics. I I grew up in the Nancy Reagan "Just Say No to Drugs" propaganda. It was very effective. I never thought I would try drugs, except for LSD. The Beatles seem to like LSD. They seem to produce great music. LSD was always fascinating. So I had it. I didn't know there was a therapeutic potential, but I remember saying to my buddies at the time, I'm like, this is what adults have forgotten, that has made the world so screwed up.
Yeah.
And so that kind of came through intuitively. And then when I moved to Vancouver, I was walking down Commercial Drive one day, and there was a shop across the road called the Urban Shaman. And I'm like, shaman? I know what shamans do. Is that possible? I go in, and sure enough, this shop sells a whole bunch of legal psychedelics, basically. Like Salvia divinorum was legal at the time in Canada. That was what I purchased that first day. But this shop had a community around it, and I would hang out at the shop, and that's where I first heard of Iboga, probably in the early 2000s. I heard about Iboga. I heard it was a 24-hour-long trip and that it cost $500 to take it. And I was broke at the time and not interested in 24-hour-long anything psychedelic. So I said at the time, ironically now, I'm never going to try that one. But I heard something along the lines of it was good at getting people off drugs as well at that time, but never really put two and two together until 2009. I was meeting with a woman who worked in the downtown east side, trying to find ways that I could help out. She didn't really have any ways, but she was very friendly. And the whole time I was speaking to her, there was a binder on the wall behind her that said Ibogaine on it. And I said, what about Ibogaine? She goes, actually, I have people calling me for that all the time. I said, let me follow that thread. So for a couple of years there, she would basically, there was a former Ibogaine clinic in Vancouver that had shut down, but its website was still up. And on the website, it said, if you're looking for information, you might want to try calling this woman Anne. So Anne was getting all these phone calls, which she then started forwarding to me. I gave Ibogaine to a couple of people. I saw quickly I didn't know what I was doing and stopped doing that. Thankfully didn't hurt anyone in the meantime, because Ibogaine is potentially dangerous if not used correctly. And instead, I basically answered these calls and said, you should go to Mexico. If you're going to do it on your own, you shouldn't, but this is what little I know about that too.
Well, why'd you say to go to Mexico?
Because there were clinics in Mexico at the time, and
All
people that knew what they were doing down there.
Okay.
So
Were they Americans or Mexicans?
Mostly
Canadian?
Americans.
Mostly
Americans.
Okay.
Assisted by Mexicans.
Okay.
And then in 2012, that woman called me and said, hey, did you know there's an Ibogaine Providers Conference in town in Vancouver? I did not. She said, well, I put your name on the list as a provider. You should go down. So I walked into this conference that day, and Jonathan Dickinson was running it. He is my current business partner. And I spent the next 4 days with people that did know what they were doing with Ibogaine, including the guy who became my first business partner, who had apprenticed with people in Mexico. It was clear he wanted to work in Canada with Ibogaine. It was legal to do so at the time. And the phone was still ringing for me. So we got together. I said, well, the next time the phone rings, let's see what we can do. So the next time it rang, there was a couple of guys. It was a father calling on behalf of his two sons. They were both heroin users. 28 years old, 32 years old, and the 28-year-old had a girlfriend who was a heroin user as well. So me and this guy, we treated this family essentially over the course of a couple of weekends in Vancouver. It went really well. It helped them out. We said there's clearly a need for this. So we found a house, rented it specifically to give Ibogaine to people, and started my first business called Liberty Root Therapy Limited. And from 2012 through until 2015, we treated about 200 people, mostly for opioid use disorder. And it went great. And then in 2017, Health Canada changed the regulatory status of Ibogaine. I never wanted to be an underground provider. I liked working with Ibogaine because I could legally do it. But when we were first working with it, it was registered as a natural health product in Canada. So kind of like a vitamin might be a natural health product, and it shouldn't be potentially dangerous. So it was misclassified, which gave me this kind of golden window of working with it. In 2017, they didn't outlaw it, but they put it on the prescription drug list. And because it hasn't gone through clinical trials, it's still not available as a prescription. So it was just in this no-go zone. So I stopped working around that time in Canada. At the same time, I was invited to be on the board of directors of MAPS Canada. MAPS is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. It was started in the States by Rick Doblin, who has really done a lot to popularize psychedelics as therapeutics. And there was a little Canadian branch of that. Rick Doblin was on the board of that. I was the chair of the board for that for a few years. And I also co-founded the Canadian Psychedelic Association during that time. I kind of won the lottery on some crypto, so I was able to take a few years off and basically volunteer my time for these nonprofits.
Bitcoin?
No, it was I saw Bitcoin happening, and I threw $3,000 that I had into a trading account, and the day I was going to buy Bitcoin, my buddy, his name's Mark Howard. He's featured in the movie Dosed. That's another documentary we're featured in, dosedmovie.com. But I called Mark. I said, yeah, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. He's like, don't buy Bitcoin. Call my buddy Shawn. And so I called this guy, Shawn. He said, yeah, buy this token. I'm like, all right, I don't care. I'm gambling with this money anyway. So I bought that. I forget what the first one was, but it doubled to $6,000 in 3 months. And from 3,000 to 6,000. Then I called Shawn again. He's like, get it out of there. Put it in this one Stratus. So I bought Stratus at 8 cents. It went to $12.
Holy shit, with $6,000?
Yeah. So it turned into, at its peak, it was $250,000. I managed to get about $150,000 out of it. This is all Canadian dollars as well. So
from $3,000 to $150,000.
Yeah.
And how long was that? Like
that was over the course of probably a year.
a year.
Like it hit the first Bitcoin run. Like it was the equivalent of 8 Bitcoin at its peak.
Wow.
And then I was unemployed. So I basically lived off that $150,000 for a couple of
That's
years,
incredible.
basically.
Can I get Shawn's number when we're done here?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, thanks. Appreciate that.
So I was able to just work on these nonprofits. And then Rick Doblin called me one day and he said, I have this lovely couple in my living room, Amber and Marcus Capone. Marcus is a former Navy SEAL. They have set up a nonprofit to provide Ibogaine to U.S. Special Forces veterans. You guys should know each other. So we had a great chat then. And then Amber was very diligent from that point forward, calling me every couple of months kind of thing, seeing if there might be a way for us to work together. I thought and the conversation started with, let's try and do this in Canada. So I was looking at different ways to do it in Canada. It basically would have meant a very expensive clinical trial. So I just kind of kept taking the calls and said, look, I'm not sure how we're going to do this. I don't think we can. Until it was right before Christmas in 2020, she called. Her and Marcus were in the car together, and there was just something about the way the conversation happened where I realized, wait a second, I don't think she's after Canada. I think she's after me. So I called her back. I spoke to my lady, Brianna. I said, I think they're just looking to work with me. I called her back 15 minutes later. Amber, is this do you just want to work with me? Is that what's going on? Can I find some other place to work and we'll go for it? She said, yes, please. I'm just looking for another Ibogaine provider to work with. And we had been planning on going to Costa Rica anyway. It was COVID mayhem. We had to get out of Dodge. So we went to Costa Rica, started looking around there in early 2021 to try and set something up there. I don't speak the language. I had no network. It wasn't really going anywhere. But while I was in Costa Rica, I spoke to Jonathan Dickinson, who ran that first Ibogaine conference. He's also the lead author on the clinical guidelines around using Ibogaine safely. We've been buddies since that first conference. He had asked me to be on the board of directors of a new nonprofit that he was setting up. And we were speaking about that, and I just happened to mention this veterans group that was keen to work with me. And he called me back a week later with another guy in the car, a guy, Jose Inzunza, who is our other current business partner. And they said, why don't you move to Tijuana? We've got all the medical equipment required, got all the medical staff that understands the medicine. Jonathan had been there for a number of years. I guess Jose and Jonathan had just been at another meeting with some guy who wanted to set something up, and it didn't go well at all. And as they're driving back, Jonathan's like, I got this buddy Trevor, let's call him. So called, I said, yeah, let me look into that. So spoke to my lady again. I said, Tijuana? She said, whatever it takes for the medicine. So we moved to Tijuana July 21st of 2021. We had our first group. That was a Saturday. We had our first group arrive on a Monday, the 23rd. And we've been going ever since. We haven't missed a week except for Christmas since, basically.
How many people have you treated through that?
We've now treated about 3,000 people through Ambio in
What percent of
Tijuana.
those are veterans?
I have the exact numbers, and
Just a roundabout.
Victoria's going to kill me for not saying
Don't
them
worry about it.
precisely.
Roundabout,
but I
if
think
you
it's
had to-
about 20%.
20% veterans?
Yeah,
And what,
yeah.
80%
And
of
that
these are
first,
just regular?
That first year, it was 95% veterans, with at least 90% of those coming through the nonprofit. And then I did a podcast with Shawn Ryan that enabled a whole bunch of other people to find us. So that led to our second house doing this 5-day program. I call that still the house that Shawn Ryan built.
Oh, that's cool.
And now we have 3 houses doing this 5-day program, which we built around veterans. We have one house where we detox people off of substances like opiates. And we have one house for our new neuroregenerative program, which is good for things like Parkinson's and MS, which Ibogaine is showing, again, it's a near miracle what we're seeing and working with those folks.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a crazy story. And it's funny how just by chance, sometimes it's the right timing and the right idea and the right person and the right place.
Yeah.
And things can come together.
I think I call it playing the long game on the law of attraction. Like, I don't think the law of attraction is a very mystical thing. I think it is setting a goal and keeping that goal in mind and doing what you can to take the next step whenever the next step presents itself. And basically in my early 20s, I was reading, let's just say one book. Let's say I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, I've been given the keys to the kingdom. I know this will work for me. This is a formula on how to make money. Now, how can I make money without losing my soul?
Right.
So then I started focusing on Vancouver's downtown east side. And I'm like, is there a way to actually make money servicing this poorest neighborhood in North America, basically? And I thought there was. I had an intuitive pull that there was. And I just continued to play the long game on the law of attraction around that neighborhood. And still, I feel like everything I'm doing is oriented towards one day I want to go back to that neighborhood and help it out. But there's a lot of steps that need to be taken to do any of that at scale, like to basically get this through FDA-approved clinical trials so that it can be a prescription and then maybe prescribed through Canada's socialized healthcare system.
Right.
But I'm, playing chess pieces on all those boards, which is cool.
Well, it's very valiant what you're doing. So
Thanks.
I'm rooting for you all the way. Let's go back. You kind of started on it, and then I cut you off. Like, go back to what is Ibogaine, and then like let the viewers who have no idea, have never heard of this stuff, like start from ground zero and work your way.
For sure. So iboga, the plant is technically called Tabernanthe iboga. It is a shrub that can grow to the size of a tree. It's native to West Africa. People cannot eat the fruit. Elephants seem to like the fruit. And it is the second layer of root bark on this plant that is used ceremonially. And the story is something like a porcupine was eating this plant. A hunter killed the porcupine. The couple, the hunter and his wife, ate this porcupine and tripped balls and went to the chief of the village and said, there's something going on here. And they investigated, and it's the second layer of root bark of this plant, which if you peel it off and chop it up and ingest tons of it in the jungle, you can go on this profound psychedelic journey that lasts anywhere from 24 to 36 hours. So the Bwiti tradition, the Bwiti spiritual tradition, grew up around the use of this medicine. And the Bwiti would not, from what I understand, not describe themselves as a religion nor even a spiritual tradition. Bwiti is the study of life, and they use this sacrament to study life itself. And in 1962, it was actually, so the French kind of colonized Gabon, and this plant was discovered by the French 100 years ago, and there was a pharmaceutical that was made in France that was basically Ibogaine in low doses. Ibogaine is just one of the alkaloids in this plant that you can pull out of this root bark. And it was used in low doses almost like a stimulant and an antidepressant. So they were kind of microdosing it in France before anything else in the Western world.
Wow.
And then in 1962, a heroin user by the name of Howard Lotsoff, he had a chemist buddy. The chemist buddy knew that Howard would try just about anything. And he pulled this Ibogaine out of his freezer one day when they were having lunch. And he said, you should try this. Nobody knows where this pharmacist or where this chemist got this Ibogaine. But Howard said, sure. He took it. And then a few days later, he took it. And he had no idea what he was getting into. It turned into a very long, very uncomfortable journey. And he came out the other end saying, for one, I'm never doing that again. That was crazy. For two, he's like, I feel something I haven't felt before, which he deemed peace. He felt an inner sense of peace that he hadn't noticed before. And then the third thing, he's like, wait a second. I haven't wanted heroin the whole time I've been on this, nor do I want it now. So that's when its anti-addictive properties were discovered. And Howard kind of became a champion of this and started knocking on doors and trying to get doctors to pay attention on what he felt he effectively discovered a cure for addiction. And he kept at it long enough. And in the early 1980s, people really did start paying attention. Clinics started opening up in places where Ibogaine was still legal. Ibogaine was made Schedule I in the United States in 1972. At the same time, basically every other psychedelic was made illegal.
What Schedule I is like?
Schedule I means there is no medical use and there's a high chance for abuse, which is if there is any drug in the Schedule I that is misclassified, it is definitely Ibogaine because it's incredibly medically effective in many different ways. It can help end addiction. We now know it treats traumatic brain injury. We know it helps with MS, with Parkinson's disease, so many medical benefits. And the high rate of abuse is the hilarious part.
Because it actually does the opposite.
Because it does the opposite. It fixes addiction, and it is not a party drug.
Do you think they just put everything that was mind-altering on that Schedule I?
Yeah.
Basically? Anything that changed your...
That's basically what happened, I think, is, everything. It was the Sweeping Drugs Act of 1972 that just picked up everything.
Wow.
So that just makes it hard to study. I think the lowest hanging fruit, if RFK Jr. is paying attention, the lowest hanging fruit for Ibogaine is just reschedule it. It shouldn't be on Schedule I. It's obviously in the wrong place. So slip it into 2, 3, or 4. I think 4 is a good place for it. Then at least you can study it without all the hoops you have to jump through, which makes it very expensive to
Have you
study.
met Brigham Bueller from Ways to Well yet?
I've spoken to him. I have not met him in person.
I'll have to introduce you.
Yeah, because he's local too, isn't
Well,
he?
he's very familiar, and he knows RFK very well.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
maybe we can connect
I
you
would
guys.
love that. Let's do
Okay.
that. Yeah, so clinics started opening up in countries where it was legal. Canada had some clinics. Mexico. In Mexico, it is just not on any list. A really cool feature of Ibogaine is the U.S. made it illegal, and there are UN treaties which make a whole bunch of substances just generally illegal around the world. Thankfully, Ibogaine is not on those UN treaties. So each country gets to decide on its own what they do with Ibogaine. So Mexico just hasn't done anything with Ibogaine. It's not on any lists. So we are licensed as Ambio, at Ambio, as a mental health clinic, as an addiction treatment center, and we just happen to use Ibogaine. But, we're fully licensed as those within Mexico, and we just happen to use Ibogaine, which, Mexico doesn't have any rules around.
Mm-hmm. What is that like, having that clinic down in Tijuana? I know yours is like close to the beach, right? Or...
Yeah, it's great. You basically cross the border, hang a right, and then and then you come to the coast, and all of the 5 locations, soon to be 6 locations as we increase size for increased demand, are all within 20 minutes on the coast there. So,
have you guys had any issues with cartel?
Zero issues. I'll knock on this wood. But
is that crazy?
Yeah, I think, I am there as a Canadian and my beautiful blonde lady, and we have never felt unsafe for a single second.
Do you guys keep security around the grounds?
Not really. We're in gated communities for the most part, so the communities themselves might have security, but not personal security. Some of the ultra VIPs that we've brought in have brought in their own security.
And what's that like living out there? Do you guys shop there? Do you cross the border into San Diego?
We do a lot of we these days we go across the border a lot.
Okay.
And we have a driver that goes up all the time. Well, drivers every day that go up, so we can basically place our Whole Foods orders and have them picked up.
Do they have like a Mexican Uber down there or something?
There is, yeah. Uber is there, and then they have they have one called the Rappi. I get advertised on YouTube all the time. Rappi.
That's hilarious. Well, all right, let's jump into let's start with veterans, because that's the one I have the most familiarity with, serving from 09 to 17. Quick backstory about me.
Please.
And how I got into psychedelics is, so I went to college after high school. I got a full degree. I got out of the college and I said, well, shit, I have this degree. I always knew I wanted to go into the military and do the Navy SEAL thing. But I had this degree and I was like, well, I might as well try to utilize this. So I went and got a regular job for a couple of years, 2.5, I think, to be exact. And I was just miserable, staring at the clock on the wall, just praying for this day to be over. And so finally I'm like, all right, I can't do this anymore. I got to do what I always wanted to do since I was little and join the Navy and try to become a Navy SEAL. And then I get in, I do that. And, back then, so I joined when I was 25 years old. I was just full of energy, motivation, ambition. I just, you talk about manifesting and stuff like that. I could see where I wanted to be, and I had everything I needed, all the faculties to make it happen and go and get it. So I got in with that kind of mentality. That takes you so far into the military, especially down the Navy SEAL pipeline, until you start to realize little tiny changes, and they're very gradual. A lot of them are more personality based, in my opinion. But I started to notice memory loss also within the teams. I became, every platoon has specialties. You have a sniper, a medic, you have a comms guy, JTAC, and then you have breacher. I got pushed into that pipeline of becoming an explosive breacher. Wow. So my brain started getting rattled by a lot of concussions. So when you're a breacher, you go to breacher school, and you might have a class of 30 different guys. Well, everybody has to get their runs in. And so whether you're the guy that's breaching the door, it's your turn. Well, if you're not, you're the guy in the stack behind him. So you're right next to him. So imagine going through 30 guys, and then you're breaching, and you're the guy right behind him, the guy right behind that, right behind that, right behind that. And you're just doing these iterations all day, every day for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then once you get your breacher certificate, then you go back to your platoon, and then now you're doing training with your platoon and your troop, and you're teaching guys how to blow doors open. This is how you stack. This is chainsaws. This is quickie saws. This is how you torch a door, and you're just doing this nonstop. Every training iteration ends with an FTX final training exercise, and you're going to utilize all of the equipment and all of the skills that you have to accomplish this final training exercise for each block of training, just so you can go down range and deploy. Okay, so it's a lot of concussive blasts that your brain gets rocked with all the time. And you're just moving so fast, you don't have time to sit there and go, wow, I just feel different. You don't have time to think. You're constantly moving to the next place, to the next place, to the next place. And you're deploying, and then you get back from deployment, and it's like dust your boots off, you're going back out, you're going to start the whole thing over, and then you start the whole thing over. And so, all of that, there was these gradual little changes that I started to notice. And a lot of it was like in like personality. My personality was changing. I had less motivation. I almost became like salty or bitter. My memory was just gone. I couldn't remember anything. And then I started to get like very self-conscious because I couldn't remember names anymore. I couldn't remember locations. We would deploy. I'd get back 2 months later. I couldn't even remember the name of the place we were at, like stuff like that. And so then you kind of start to withdraw yourself from like social activities. And then from that, you can imagine what that does socially with you and you're supposed to be your brothers. You're supposed to be one of the best times of your life. So I saw that in myself growing, which is one of the reasons I got out when I did at 8 years. There's guys that have been in longer where I saw what, if I would have stayed longer, that would have been me later on. And I didn't want that. I also saw guys that were a little bit older than me that were getting medically discharged for a lot of like substance abuse and alcohol and like all sorts of stuff that they were doing. And basically they would just spin out of control, and the system doesn't have time to sit there and coddle you if you're broken. Okay. Like this platoon has to deploy. So you figure it out on your own, or we're going to get rid of you. And we're going to put somebody in that can do your job. We don't have time for this. And I don't blame them for that, because they don't. There's a mission to accomplish. Okay. So, so all this starts to play out, and then I get out. I'm like, I got to go. I was like, my body, my brain were just screaming at me, you got to go, get out. No matter what. I gave up a huge re-signing bonus. I gave up a rank up. I gave up a lot of stuff just to get out. So I get out, and I'm like, I need to get away from San Diego. I moved my family back to Texas. We get back to Texas, and it's the same thing. I still had a little bit of that ambition, and I had a little bit of money, so I was able to piece this small business that I did for about 3 years. I was able to put that together just enough so we could get by, but the whole time still wasn't right. And I still was like, I felt like I had ostracized myself from my own community, because I was like embarrassed, and not that it was their fault, but I felt like the relationship wasn't there, the love for that. When I went into it for the love for it, I left because I didn't want it anymore. You know what I mean? I kind of pushed myself away from my own community, and I didn't want to see any other team guys. I was like embarrassed because I got out before I originally thought I originally would. And it became this long road where I was just broken. I didn't remember who I was. My memory sucked. My emotions were different. My relationships with my kids, my wife at the time, like it was all different. And so I just kind of just sat there, just kind of like grinding my teeth, running in place. And then finally, eventually our community is so small. It doesn't take long for other team guys in the area to figure out who you are. Mm-hmm. And then eventually one of them, Rick Anstrom, I don't know if you know him, but Rick Anstrom went out of his way to come meet me, and then he sat me down, and immediately he could see like, okay, this dude needs some help. Mm-hmm. Like, cause I was there, but I wasn't there like here. And so he goes, dude, like, I do psilocybin and like DMT retreats. He's like, I've been administering these for like soldiers for quite a while, like our brothers. He's like, I'm going to hook you up with some mushrooms so you can kind of start to see what it feels like. And then when you're ready, let me know, and I'll get you into one of these retreats. And so I was like, nah, I'm not doing any stupid retreats. That's retarded, that's like pussy shit, right? I ain't, whatever. I don't have any problems. But he gave me the mushrooms, and at first I'm like, fuck it, I'm fucking bored. I'm fucking hating my life right now. So I took some mushrooms, and then instantly it just like dropped my body core temperature down like 5 degrees. Wow. That was the first thing I noticed. I was like, man, I'm cold. Like, I haven't felt cold. I run hot, sweaty hot, like the majority of my life. And then that hit, and I was cold for the first time. And then it's just like all the colors became beautiful. Like the sounds, listening to music became like amazing, like best it's ever sounded. Wow. I've always been an active guy, training, pushing myself. But once I learned how caffeine forces your body into that fight or flight mode, I realized it was wrecking my recovery. I'd get the boost, but I couldn't really rest. That's when I came across methylene blue. It gives me clean energy, sharper focus, and I could still recover. Honestly, it changed everything for me in the gym, in business, and in life. Then I discovered alpha lipoic acid. On its own, it's a strong nootropic, boosting choline, which drives brain and body performance. But when you combine it with methylene blue, it's on another level. That's why I worked with the partner to create Magic Bullet, methylene blue plus ALA. For me, methylene blue was powerful on its own, but with ALA, it's the only way I do it now. Right now at bluevitality.com, you can pick up a full bottle of Magic Bullet for just $39.95. Use my promo code SJ to get 20% off the regular price. If you're serious about your training, your focus, or your recovery, this is the way to go.
Do you know how much you took that first time?
I think I took like 2 or 3 grams,
Nice,
something
perfect.
like that. And then I fell in love with it. After that, I started taking more and more and more. I did like 8, 10, 12. And then I just kept going deeper. I wanted to see how deep I could go because I would have an amazing trip. And then I kept going back because I wanted to do that again. And seeing the wildest things and just, and it's all these walls that I had put up, they started to fall off one by one by one. And then my personality became a little bit more friendly. And like I started liking people again, which I normally looked at people with a sideways eye, you know?
Yeah.
And so I started noticing all of it, but I still wasn't quite there. I still had a long way to go. So me and Rick stayed close, and eventually he talked me into doing a retreat. And that's when I did the psilocybin mixed with the MDMA. And then the next day we did a 5-MeO experience, which is like a ceremony. And that's like the most psychedelic substance you can do. And that changed my perspective on everything. And I'm almost done talking. But so when I did the 5-MeO, like what I had lost between when I came in 2009 to the teams to when I left in 2017 and those next 3 years, I had lost my appreciation for life. I lost enjoying being here on this earth and like having ambition and having goals and like that feeling of like, I want that. I can do that. I had lost it. And so when I did the 5-MeO, it took me down like to this place where it was like a realm of just chaos. Like it was so chaotic in this psychedelic realm that it like gave me a profound appreciation for like reality.
Oh, I love that you say that.
Yeah,
Yes.
like this table, like just
Yeah.
it's just like I can touch this table, it's the square, it's this rectangle, this book, this pen, this phone, this bottle. Like all of these things are things that I know what they are, they're familiar to me, okay? And I didn't realize how much I appreciated just having like something I understand until I had the exact opposite for long enough.
Amen.
Yeah. So I had that long enough to where I was like, okay, I'm good. I just like I don't need a substance that's going to alter my thinking or my mind or my, whatever. I'm just happy to be alive and be here, because this is peaceful to me.
Yeah.
And then I started imagining what stuck with me, and I've never been able to forget, but I imagined a world where what if people didn't live in this simple, coordinated, logical reality? What if we lived in a reality that was just complete chaos? Like people were tripping balls all the fucking time. And then those people could take a pill that would give them this.
Yeah.
They would take that every fucking day. They'd be doing a drug to do the opposite of what our people are using drugs to do.
Yeah.
Because they'd be so sick of that world and all the chaos. You know what I mean? So that's my story, and that's how I fell in love with this treatment. I honestly don't even take this stuff anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I might do it every now and then if there's somebody I know that doesn't want to do it alone,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't need it anymore. But I know there's a lot of people that do, not just veterans. And so like that's why I wanted to bring you on, and like if you could share some stories with other veterans that have had experiences, and take it away.
For one, your insight on coming out of the chaos and just appreciating normal, that's wise. And that's like people talk about, well, what about a bad trip or 5-MeO for sure. 5-MeO can present a spectrum. The spectrum is from heaven to hell. And oftentimes people go into that hell realm and they're like, what was that? Why was I shown that? And I'm like, if you can't tease any other lesson out of that, at least tease, oh my God, how good is it to just have normal consciousness again?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And that it just gives you went straight there. It's just that appreciation for, baseline consciousness. Hallelujah. This is so good.
Uh-huh.
And that's it. Like, we rarely call them bad trips. We'll call them challenging trips, and you're able to tease something out of it. We're the meaning making machines. We can tease the meaning that we want out of it. And that's my go-to. If somebody goes to that hell realm, I'm like, aren't you glad you're not there anymore, man?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what that bad trip is for, to
Yeah.
teach you. To teach you. Maybe you've been taking life for granted.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. So, yeah, working with veterans overall has been so amazing. Like, I'm Canadian. We don't really have a military culture. I can think of one person that I went to high school with that ended up in the military. And whereas you guys know, tens or 20 of people that you went to high school with who end up in the military. So I didn't know there was a military subculture. I didn't know anything about the military when I started working with you guys. And then I start working with tip of the spear, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, MARSOC guys, Top Gun guys even. So it's been amazing just to, become friends with so many incredible veterans, really.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put a plug in right now. November 3rd on Netflix, a movie called In Waves and War comes out. And it features 3 former Navy SEALs, Marcus Capone, DJ Shipley, and Matty Roberts, all on various stages of their journeys with this medicine. But the cool thing is it really goes back into their childhood. It goes back into, buds. It goes into early days of deployment, some chaos that happened during deployment. And then it comes into their retirement and what life was like afterwards. And so much of what you described you went through, it's just similar to so many of you. I think operator syndrome is a good term because operator syndrome seems to cover a bunch of the symptoms that can come up, which might be PTS related symptoms, which might show up as anger, depression, anxiety, the hypervigilance. But it also can cover the traumatic brain injury. And I think that's what we're discovering, that so much of those first symptoms I just described are actually related to traumatic brain injury, getting concussed a dozen times a day for years in a row. And that was actually Marcus Capone's story, is he didn't feel like he had PTSD. He loved his job. He didn't have a lot of moral injury. He felt like he did really good when he was serving as a Navy SEAL. And something wasn't right. He was drinking too much. He was angry. He was flying off the handle. Amber thought he was going to take himself with suicide, basically preparing their kids for that. And as a last-ditch effort, they tried Ibogaine. And he came back, and she knew right away she had her husband back. And they surmised that it was more related to traumatic brain injury, and maybe Ibogaine is helping traumatic brain injury. So Amber started knocking on a lot of doors to see if people would help research this, and eventually Dr. Nolan Williams at Stanford, bless his soul, he said yes and put together a study of 30 U.S. Special Forces veterans needed a traumatic brain injury in order to get into the study. And they all went to Stanford prior to coming to Ambio. Then they came to Ambio just for Ibogaine because we wanted to measure one signal. We didn't do the 5-MeO that time around. And then went immediately back to Stanford, more brain scans, more personality tests. Then most of them did a month follow-up as well. The pre-brain scans were clearly showing traumatic brain injury. Post-brain scans showing it was largely reversed, if not entirely reversed, in some of those guys.
What are the markers on that?
They measured PTSD, depression, anxiety, and disability scores in the first paper that was published. Again, all from off the charts down to next to nothing. The interesting one was the disability score, which they used to measure objectively the traumatic brain injury. And it's a bunch of tests that you take, and immediately following the Ibogaine, the disability score didn't change much at all. A month follow-up, and all those scores improved pretty dramatically. So the Ibogaine stays in your system, continues to do something. And then on the brain scans, traumatic brain injury basically shows up as a dark spot in the brain. And after Ibogaine, those dark spots were largely gone. There hasn't been an imaging study published yet, but hopefully soon. But one anecdote around that is we had a guy come in, former Navy SEAL. He described his Ibogaine journey as shallow and long. He didn't really experience too many visions, like it wasn't very exciting at all for him, but he said that he felt as though for years that he had 3 knives in his brain, almost like knives into a butcher's block. And during the Ibogaine, he felt each of those removed one at a time. And then he felt his whole brain relax.
Wow.
And he said to the technician who did his final brain scan, he's like, I got to see this, man. You got to show me. And he's like, I'm not supposed to, but you got to see this. And in those exact spots where he felt the knife, there were dark spots. And at the end, there were no more dark spots.
Wow.
So again, with veterans, it's at least traumatic brain injury that's being treated as well. But this operator syndrome also includes the lack of the brotherhood, you know, like I've lost my boys. These are guys that I was willing to die for, and some of them are dead, and here I am holding this baby or whatever. And psychedelics in general, and Ibogaine in particular, is also good for those times of transition. They're good at helping you readjust so that you can be happy in the new life. I have a friend now, a former NHL hockey player named Alish Hemsky, and he played for the Edmonton Oilers for more than a decade, I think, assistant captain, then played with Dallas, and I'll see him later today, actually, while I'm in Texas. But the operator syndrome is similar to what professional athletes go through in their transition as well. Is, you know, you lose the brotherhood, you lose the action, you lose the adventure, and maybe you've taken a whole bunch of blows to the head. So we're finding Ibogaine works really well for pro athletes as well. And, you know, Alish, when he came down, he hasn't had a drink since, and that was his big demon.
How long does it stay in your system, the Ibogaine?
Ibogaine converts to nor-ibogaine, which stays in your fat cells, and people say anywhere from a couple of weeks to a few months it stays in the system.
So do people come back every so often, or is it one and done typically?
For a lot of people, it's one and done, and a lot of people feel like coming back a year or so later.
And how intense is this trip? You said it lasts anywhere from 24 to 36 hours. How intense is this? Are we on 5-MeO? Are we in psilocybin MDMA realm?
It's a good question. So people call it the Mount Everest of psychedelics. I think that's mostly because of the duration. But Ibogaine's not really an ego destroyer. Like the 5-MeO or even mushrooms can be, like you melted into the universe and you have no idea what's going on. Where 5-MeO, it feels more of the earth. It's a root. I'd say rather than an ego destroyer, it's an ego repairer.
The Ibogaine?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you never forget who you are and what you're doing. You might have your eyes closed and be seeing fantastic visions, almost like a lucid dream type state. It's called oniric, which means as related to dreams. So if people do have visions, it's often dream-like like that. Sometimes with crystal clarity, you understand what it's showing you. Sometimes it's just sheer chaos. But if I tap you at any point and say, hey, how you doing? You'll know exactly who you are and what you're doing. So it's kind of comforting in that way. I was as scared as the next guy the first time I took it, but ever since I don't really fear it. I know it's going to be a long couple of days, but it's not terrifying like ayahuasca, for example, has been for me. Or
I heard ayahuasca is like makes you very nauseous and sick.
Ibogaine can make you nauseous and sick as well. Not as much as ayahuasca as a general rule, but I'd say 75 to 85% of people are going to purge at least once on Ibogaine. Some people way more than that. Some people not at all.
And so how many times have you done it, did you say?
I've done it 11 now.
You've done Ibogaine 11 times.
In big doses. I've done countless smaller doses as well. Especially
is
back in the day, we used to take like maybe 100 or 200 milligrams just to help you stay awake. Because back in the day, I was doing everything. Like we bring people in for 7 to 10 days. And while I'm up all night watching them on Ibogaine, I can take just a little, and it does act as a stimulant.
I was going to ask you about the microdosing. I'd like to actually try a microdose of it. I don't like to trip for that long. Even like 3 or 4 hours is enough for me. I'm like, that's too much for me.
Yeah.
But
microdosing is nice with Ibogaine. It's my favorite microdose for sure. It just kind of makes you feel smarter when you take it. It's a bit of an antidepressant.
Okay, give me
it's got some energy in it. Yeah, I know a guy. But I try and do it once a year to try and remember, for the most part, what I'm doing to people.
Yeah.
Also, it's just so good for you. For me, it's always challenging. It keeps kicking my ass in the kind of the same way again and again. But I feel great afterwards. Even the day after Ibogaine is described as the gray day. Everybody feels rough the day after Ibogaine. So you take the medicine. If you take it with us, we do it at nighttime on the second night that you're with us in that 5-day program. And it's the first 6 to 12 hours are kind of where the psychedelic bells and whistles are. If you're going to be seeing things or hearing things, it'll be in that initial phase. And then the next 12 hours is called the gray day, which is basically you're about as tired as you've ever been, but you can't sleep because the medicine's still in your system. You're just depleted. The night before, all of your neurotransmitters would have been firing on full blast. The next day, you've got nothing. So you're not kind of in an acute tripping phase through then. Some people might still be experiencing visions, but basically you're just lying around pretty tired. But I did Ibogaine a few times ago, and my gray day was horrible. And I'm like, screw this. Why am I doing this? I don't need to do this once a year. This is stupid. What am I doing? I can't believe I do this to people. What is this? But the very next day, I felt like $1 million. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm definitely doing this again next year. Yeah. And people that do come back, nobody that I know ever comes back because they feel as though Ibogaine didn't work for them the first time. It's more like, this really did work, and now I want to peel back a few layers is why people come back a second.
Do you guys administer this like in a group setting, or is it solo? Is somebody in a room by themselves?
Yeah, so we do it in a group, especially for the detox program. You might do it more on your own, more of an individualized program depending on the substances that you're on. But the 5-day program that we really built up around working with veterans is we'll pick a group of anywhere, depending on the house, anywhere from 6 to 11 people. We have one house that can take 6 people. That's kind of our standard veterans house, actually. We have a house that can take 7 people and a house that can take 11 people. And we pick them up in San Diego on day 1, bring them down. We're only about 40 minutes from the airport. That first day, we do some preparation. We'll help everybody unpack to make sure there's no contraindicated things or substances there. We'll do a circle to get to know each other. We'll feed people. We're kind of known for our food. Everybody loves the food.
Is it vegetarian food?
No.
Oh, thank God.
It's hearty, lots of meat, steak at lunch, ribs, especially if a Texan's coming down. We'll do some break out some barbecue.
Get some Wagyu.
Yeah. Then we do a traditional Mexican sweat lodge that first day as well, which is a great way to kick off the week. So again, like to answer your question, 6 guys came down together, and they're going to go through this whole process together, including the sweat lodge. The next day, there's some breath work. It's good to get reacquainted with breath, which is a good ally through a process like this. Some more work in a circle with each other, some one-on-one preparation. Everybody gets a massage. And then on that second night, we'll start working with Ibogaine, and that'll go through that second night into the third day. And the treatment room is the same room that you would have done breath work, and we'll do yoga in, and everybody's given a mattress and hooked up to a heart monitor, and basically puts on a blindfold with some music playing and goes into themselves for a number of hours.
You mentioned everybody's hooked up to a heart monitor.
Yeah.
I know there's some reasons for that. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, Ibogaine has a potential cardiotoxicity issue. It prolongs the QT interval of the heart rate. The QT interval is basically the space in between the top and bottom chamber firing. A lot of medications can prolong the QT interval of the heart rate. It's pretty common, but you don't want to take an already prolonged QT and give them Ibogaine because that could stretch out the heartbeats too much. So we ask for EKGs prior to arrival. We do EKGs upon arrival. We hook people up to heart monitors throughout the entire treatment. And bottom line is there is this issue. A bigger issue is drug interactions. So people need to come off of SSRIs prior to coming for at least 5 days prior to arrival, which can be challenging. Doctors are very good at putting people on those things, but doctors are not very good at helping people off of those things if people have even been warned that there might be withdrawal symptoms if they do ever come off. And then, yeah, I think that's even probably more of a bigger danger is if you're detoxing off heroin, for example, and you snuck heroin into the treatment and use it during the treatment, I think that's the kind of thing that we see more mortality from something like that.
Does that happen? Has that happened?
It hasn't, yeah, not with us, thank God. But I think that's when people try and do it on their own at home to detox, they don't have the knowledge we have, which is, sometimes around hour 15, you might feel some breakthrough withdrawal pains. You just got to get through it and you'll be fine. But if you're at home alone and you have access to heroin, Ibogaine's already made your system opiate naive. You take the same hit you would have before and you overdose. So that's a danger. But bottom line with the safety concerns is it is very easy to screen out those safety concerns. By the time we give anybody Ibogaine at Ambio, we're not concerned about any of that. The heart monitor is almost just a token gesture at that point.
And in post-treatment, is there any worry for cardiac issues?
No. Like once the treatment's done, within the 72-hour range, you're going to be back to normal.
Can you talk about, have you had a scary moment that you've had to experience?
We haven't had any adverse events on this 5-day program at all. It's been really beautiful.
Have you heard of anything? Nothing like that?
Yeah, for sure. Like people have died taking Ibogaine before. Yeah.
And what happens like that? I imagine that's got to be like crazy, like just for the community as a whole, because I'm sure that word gets out very fast.
Yeah, word gets out. It's been public knowledge for a lot of these incidents, and then you just look at it, and then what was it? Was it a cardiotoxicity issue? Was it somebody taking a substance that they shouldn't have? Yeah, it's kind of heartbreaking, and apparently deaths happen in the jungle of Gabon as well sometimes on this medicine.
The jungles of Gabon. Oh, so that's the
Bwiti
origin,
tradition.
right? Yeah. Well, let's go back to the happy side of this. Tell me about Dosed and you working with some of these Hollywood actors. Like, how did that happen?
So Dosed is a documentary that I was a part of. That was, I can't even remember when we filmed that. I'm going to say it was around 2016 or 17 we were actually doing the filming. And Dosed follows one woman's journey. Her name's Adrienne, using Ibogaine and mushrooms to overcome her polysubstance drug abuse, primarily heroin, and her depression. So I got a call from these filmmakers at a certain point, and I had just kind of shut down operations in 2017. And I basically said no. Then my buddy Mark called me. He said, yeah, this film crew. I'm like, oh, man. So I decided to get involved at that point and kind of played a consultant role. And I gave Adrienne a dose of psilocybin in the movie as well. But, yeah, it's an incredible movie. It took some twists and turns that make for a great story. It was quite nerve-wracking in the moment, but watching that movie, every time we play that movie, I still get sucked into it. I've probably seen it 100 times. But
do you still get requests from like Hollywood type actors to help with some of the situations, or is that a one-off?
Well, she wasn't even a Hollywood type actress. She was just a regular woman whose friend was a documentary filmmaker. So then Hollywood type people that I've treated, there have been a number. I'm trying to think if there's any names I can say.
I know. I was going to say
I
it's
don't
probably
think
confidential.
I
You can tell me
can.
offline now.
I can tell you offline. Because
Please.
one guy has been semi-public with it. He spoke to the veterans community about what he's done, but he didn't want it kind of shared outside that
That's
community.
fine.
So I can share that with you.
I just hope it's Will Smith. I'm waiting for that comeback.
Who? Well, I already mentioned Alex Hemsky, the athlete. There's some other athletes who have been public about it. We treated Brett Favre. He's a celebrity.
Brett Favre. Go
yeah,
back. Go back.
Yeah, he's awesome. We were talking about celebrities we know ahead of time, and you mentioned some ones who are really nice guys. Brett Favre's an incredibly nice guy.
That's
We
what I
actually
hear.
stayed with him at his house in Mississippi when we were visiting as well. So him and his wife, Deanna.
What was his substance abuse issues?
It's pretty apparent from watching the news today. Violent criminals are not going away anytime soon, and you need to have somebody watching your back. Whether that's you personally, your family, your friends, or your business, Iconic Security is our premier personal protection firm, founded by a former Navy SEAL, a former Secret Service agent, and a former U.S. attorney. With over 60 years of combined military, law enforcement, and intelligence experience, we deliver unmatched, discreet security tailored to your needs. From executive protection and secure nights out to residential patrols, event security, cyber threat defense, and expert consulting. Iconic ensures your safety with precision and care. No shortcuts, no drama, just peace of mind. Visit iconicsecurity.com to build your custom protection plan today. Iconic Security, because your safety is non-negotiable. A link to the website can be found in the description of this podcast. Thank you for your time, and stay safe out there.
No substance abuse, but he has Parkinson's.
Okay.
So he wanted to take it for Parkinson's, and
How did that?
I think he's seen some improvement. And
Really?
he spoke to the LA Times about his time with us, and he's really glad his symptoms haven't progressed too much, and he knows that he has this that he can call upon further down the road as well. He had another buddy with Parkinson's come in for treatment at the same time, and he saw massive improvements.
Have you guys used it for ECT? Like,
Tough to measure ECT overall, but I imagine that's kind of what it's treating when we go with TBI. Robert Gallery's an FL player, probably predisposed to CTE. He's done Ibogaine a few times now, and he's gone. He's not suicidal anymore. He's happy. He's got a Athletes for Care, I believe, is the name of his nonprofit that he's set up. Tate Fletcher, a UFC guy and an actor. I think he's an old roommate of Joe Rogan's, actually. But Tate Fletcher, he's been through for treatment. He's been public about his treatment. It really saved him from suicide as well. It was actually an accident while doing a stunt in the movies that messed him up bad for a year before a Navy SEAL friend of his said, you should take Ibogaine.
dang.
Yeah.
So what would you say like the success rate of this stuff is? Like for drug users, for alcoholics, if you had to give it like a number, what do you think it is?
Kind of anecdotally over the years for drug abuse, I would say it's anywhere from 40 to 60%. Some people will say it's more than that. And I will say that with proper integration and support, the average is probably higher than that. But even if it's 40%, if you look at traditional rehab or AA or NA, they have, meta studies of those programs show less than a 10% success rate.
Oh, yeah.
So even if it's 40%, which I think it's higher than 40%, it's still a pretty astounding success rate. And then, just overall, it's tough to say, but it's very high. There's very few unsatisfied guests.
And what would you say like post-treatment, how do the ones that do maintain their success, their sobriety of whatever sort, what are they doing that makes it last? And what are their families, their support doing?
Well, integration is the term that's used there, and integration basically means taking the lessons that you've learned during the psychedelic experience and integrating them into your life. And some people do lots of integration, and still don't see success. Some people do zero integration and do see success.
That was me.
Yeah.
I got
You know?
time for integration.
So I don't know. I'm constantly looking for the special sauce, but I think to add something like meditation, to make sure you're exercising, I think basically everybody knows what they need to do in order to make their life better. It's just easier said than done. And after Ibogaine, it's easier to do. Like it's great at getting rid of those negative patterns. It's also very good at helping you implement positive patterns. Around drinking, I think the superpower for Ibogaine around drinking and drugs is it gives you the superpower of saying no to the first drink. You all of a sudden have a new strength saying no to that first drink. And you can go on saying no to that first drink forever, and you're never going to drink again. But I think if you have that first drink, you've kind of let down that barrier. If you have the first one, you're probably going to have a second. It might take a month or 2 or 3, but once you have that second, that third will probably come a little bit quicker. So I always just encourage people the opportunity Ibogaine gives you is saying no to that first one. So just do that to the best of your ability for as long as you can.
After these guys come out of their treatment or maybe during it, do you have any experts like on staff that are there to help kind of like explain to them what they're seeing and what they're feeling, like the experience, kind of to translate it to where they can understand? Because I remember when I did it, it was kind of like, they're like, "Are you good?" And then you're like, "All right, figure it out on your own." Yeah. I mean, they were very professional. They were I love them to death. But I felt like it would have been cool if there was somebody there that has like a booklet of all these different experiences and like people that have kind of like over time figured out what these mean, and like kind of that help to like, I don't know, explain you saw this might be because of this, and how that's going to help them.
Yeah. So we include coaching before and after. So we have experienced Ibogaine coaches. Everybody gets at least 2 sessions before they come in to help them prepare, and then at least 2 sessions afterwards to help them integrate. So during the 5 days that people are with us, there's not a lot of time to unpack things. We're squeezing a lot in there, but we do have circles before and circles after to have everybody describe their journey, what they saw. And then, yes, we have hosts / on-site therapeutic support who are familiar with the medicine and can help somebody say something like, "Aren't you just glad you're not stuck in that hell realm anymore?" And make a little bit of sense of it that way, for sure. But I've heard more than 1,000 debriefs on what people's Ibogaine journeys were like. And everyone absolutely is completely different. And there's some themes that come up. Like often you see like a slideshow type thing. Sometimes it's analog. Sometimes it's digital, almost like Minority Report. You can zoom in on things. You can pull back on things. That's a common theme. The Ibogaine minions, I call them, are a very common thing. Like you might feel a whole bunch of Pac-Men or construction men actually working on your brain. You might see them.
I have an experience. So when I was doing the psilocybin mixed with the 5 or the MDMA, and I can't remember how. I think I ended up taking like 7 grams of psilocybin mixed with MDMA. And I had done plenty of psilocybin, but when you combine those two, it made it kind of interesting.
The hippie flip.
Yeah. But they made us sit there with the mask on our eyes, which I didn't like. I like to look around and see the world, but I did whatever they told me. And it put me into it felt like I was in an ocean, like swimming in an ocean of like souls, and I could feel the souls of the other people that were in the group setting with me. I could feel and other souls that weren't even in the room, I could feel souls. And it was kind of like, you could kind of like guide, almost like you're Superman. You're kind of like flying through this ocean. And, as the person next to me would start crying or whatever, I didn't cry, but the person next to me cried a lot, like for like an hour, over an hour, this person cried. They had a lot of grief. I could feel that cascading into my experience. It wasn't just the auditory. I could feel that energy coming into my experience. Wow. And so I would steer away because I didn't, I was like, I felt really sympathetic for the person, but you can only feel it for so long before you're like, I need some happiness. But the reason I bring that up is you're talking about the minions. I experienced mine as like if like I called it a spider. It's the only way I could understand it, because as I was floating through this abyss, it felt like there was a spider attached to my brain, and it was forcefully taking out all of these like traumatic events and pulling them, the ones that I had like swept under the rug, and it forced to pull them out, unwrap it, and I could feel its little like spider legs like unwrapping this thing.
Wow.
And then it would like do, and then they'd throw it out. And then I try to swim away, and it would like pull me back. Nope, we're not done. And it would grab another one and unwrap it and throw it out. And it did this for, I don't know, an hour or two. And then finally it stopped, and I was free to just kind of like free float. But
Nice.
that's funny.
The
you
hippie
said-
flip
That's
minions.
crazy. The minions.
Yeah, that happens all the time. Some kind of construction work. Another common theme is game shows. Like you have to repeat things until you get it right again and again. It can show up in different ways. I've had a couple of people describe a similar thing, but one guy was lying there and he heard a voice clearly come to him, said, "All right, I'm going to work on you now. You can't move." And this guy started like doing brain surgery on him. And the guy moved his pinky or something. He's like, "No, I'm serious. Don't
Wow.
move anything."
Did he
for just a
recognize the
few
voice?
minutes. No, not at all. But he was in there doing some kind of work.
From a non-scientific perspective, if you had like just a hunch that maybe this is what this stuff is, I mean, we're talking diving deeper, not science guy. I'm just talking like from the soul.
Well, when you talk about the spirit of something, to me, the spirit of something is basically the energy behind something. If I'm clapping my hands like this, it's got a much different spirit than if I'm clapping like this. And I think this molecule, or this group of molecules in Iboga, has a certain spirit to it. And it's a heck of a lot more complicated than just doing that. So I think the vibration that comes when you take something like Iboga, it is a very sophisticated vibration. And that sophisticated vibration might show up as a buzzing noise. That's a very common thing during Iboga, as we warn everybody that you might hear auditory hallucinations as well. And a very common one is intense buzzing. But that intense vibration might show up and be interpreted as a person. And people describe meeting Iboga all the time, or Dr. Iboga or Mr. Iboga. People describe meeting Mother Nature all the time on this medicine, and Mother Nature, or a feminine force taking them around and showing them things. So I think we can anthropomorphize, meaning, you kind of put a human personality on top of this thing. And maybe it's us projecting a human personality on top of this thing. Maybe this thing has a human personality. It's definitely sophisticated, and it shows up in all these crazy ways. I remember one special forces veteran. He wasn't feeling anything, and if people don't feel anything for long enough, we'll give them a booster dose. And I was working that night, and he's like, "Hey, I don't feel anything." And this guy's a tough dude. And I'm like, "All right, we'll give you a booster dose." And in his vision, I often describe Ibogaine as, I use a roller coaster as the metaphor. And really the only rule of roller coasters is just don't try and get off in the middle of the ride.
Right.
And that's the best way to make the most out of an Ibogaine journey.
I like that.
It's going to be crazy, twists, turns, loops, maybe a water feature or two with some purging into a bucket, but just don't try and get off the ride. And he actually visualized a roller coaster, but everybody had left already. And he was all alone. And then this little being came up and he said, "Are you ready, motherfucker?" And then took him on the craziest, most intense roller coaster ride of all
That's such
time.
a team guy fucking experience.
Yeah,
isn't it?
totally.
So, out of that, any other crazy experiences or revelations that you've experienced with all these these clients that have come through?
Yeah, all the time. Like the guy who had been shot in the head and needed a cane and sunglasses at all times because of his light sensitivity. After Ibogaine, he left us his cane because he didn't need it. His balance issues were fixed.
No way.
He didn't need sunglasses anymore. And he went home and made love to his wife for the first time in 4 years.
Holy shit.
To have... Like I've just seen some amazing stuff. Like I think it was actually a psilocybin journey I was giving somebody, and I had a co-sitter with me for the years that I couldn't work with Ibogaine in Canada. I gave a number of people psilocybin journeys because you don't generally need to worry about taking people to the hospital. I never wanted to give Ibogaine underground because you never want to, if there is an emergency, second guess yourself about going to the hospital. But mushrooms, you aren't going to face anything like that. So even though they were actually technically more illegal in Canada, I didn't have a problem giving a few people mushroom journeys. But one time I gave this friend of mine mushrooms, and 2 stories here. The first one, I had the co-sitter, and I was sitting at the end of the sofa, kind of facing this person. I had the co-sitter sitting to my left, and the person taking the medicine was right in front of me. And I had my eyes closed, they had a blindfold on, and at the exact same time, we both went like this with our arms.
No way.
The exact same time. I didn't know it happened until after, and that woman that was co-sitting told me.
That's crazy.
I had another friend I was giving mushrooms to. I think I had a little bit of cannabis off my vape at that time. And she was on mushrooms. I was sitting next to her. I had my eyes closed again. And all of a sudden, I knew I was seeing what she was seeing. I was completely in her vision. And I didn't say anything. The next day, we were out for breakfast with each other, and she goes, and then there was that part where you were in there in front of that pyramid. And that's exactly what I was seeing. I was in there in front of, meditating in front of a pyramid in her journey was exactly what I was seeing.
Yeah, I have this idea, and I could be way off, but I have this sneaking suspicion that any mind-altering drug, if you take enough of all of them, they all end at the same point. I think they all cross at the end point. And I'm almost wondering, because the brain releases these chemicals when we die. And I'm wondering if that is the limit. And it's like we keep pushing the boundaries on psychedelic trips because maybe inherently our subconscious is very curious as to the point of death. Because I've taken a lot of different drugs and they all have a different effect at the beginning, but it feels like the more you take of them, they're all kind of going to the same crossroad, and a lot of the same experiences you're talking about are the same ones I had with other ones, you know, and I just wonder, like, there's so many health benefits we can get from all of these things. I wish that we could get to a point with our science and, you know, the future of the technology behind this stuff, and I hope people are working towards it, towards we can get the benefits without having to have the trip. And I think should be our ultimate goal, because maybe the trip is part of it, but I think as far as like what this is doing for people's brains specifically, you know, some of us, we don't have time to take a trip to Mexico. We don't have, you know, the patience to sit through a 24, 36-hour trip. Or even just like a weekend. We got kids, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, we ain't got time to trip on mushrooms, and we have too much to focus on. So if they could come out with a non-experiential drug that has the same or close to the same amount of benefits, I can imagine what that would do for people.
Yeah, it's interesting. For the time frame, there's a 5-MeO-DMT nasal spray is working itself through clinical trials. And so that could be kind of a shorter hour-long thing, potentially. But I think what was interesting about what you said is everything going to the same place with these substances. And I really feel that. And I think I feel like it's kind of our spiritual home. Like, I feel as though this Earth is not a vacation hotspot. I feel like we're all here on deployment. I've had many people basically say that, in different journeys,
I got
saying
the
that
same
they
feeling.
went home. And while they were at home, it was kind of like, oh, congratulations, you're back for a minute. Great, good to see you kind of
Yeah.
thing. And then kind of this regret at knowing you have to go back to Earth to continue
Wow.
the work. And I think that's the gift of these substances, is they can give you a peek over the fence.
Well,
and for me, for 5-MeO-DMT, every time I take it now, I go back to the exact same spot. And it's this place of complete completion, perfect satisfaction. We are all there. We all feel great at having accomplished this grand experiment together. One of the times I did it, it felt 5-MeO, it felt as though I had come to the period at the end of the last sentence of the story of biological life itself. And only from that perspective could you cast a judgment on whether or not that was good or bad. And from that point, the answer was, that was good. That was awesome. The action, adventure, the heartache, the whoa, that was incredible.
Yeah.
And I think our souls are working towards there. I think we come back in bodies again and again and again and work out this thing. But there is a goal that has both already been accomplished, and we never left there in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, we've got one toe back in heaven, as it were.
Well, that's kind of like what I was telling you, where, you know, that like just appreciating reality again. I had the same thought you were saying, where we're going back to where we're from, right? When we trip, where it's because like we're craving home. Well, what if home is this melting pot of chaos? But it is tranquil, it's peaceful, but what if you have the option? You know, they talk about reincarnation on this planet. What if reincarnation is just the people that would prefer, nice, neat, organized, orderly existence for a lifetime?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then when you go back, maybe you get bored of that, and anytime you want, you can hop back down into another body and experience this again. And what if reincarnation is just people that prefer to be in order, as opposed to chaos? And maybe that's the universe, order and chaos.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Something like that.
But this was a crazy, awesome podcast. We got about 9 minutes here. I kind of wanted to just give you the floor to kind of talk about like where you take it. What does 2026 and beyond look like for Ambio and you? And you can announce anything, whatever you got.
Great. Yeah, well, there's a lot of interest in Ibogaine these days. Texas signed a bill to use $50 million of state's money towards getting Ibogaine through clinical trials. So that's former Texas Governor Rick Perry's been focused on that. He's a good friend now. Crazy, the people this has brought into my life. He's one of the kind of celebrities that's been public about his journey. He was in the New York Times recently talking about his time at Ambio and how he did brain scans before and after, and his neurologist says it looks like you have a 45-year-old brain now, from a kind of a typical 72-year-old brain to about a 45-year-old brain after Ibogaine. So that's amazing.
Let's get back in office.
Yeah, so that's created a lot of demand. Ambio, in as it stands right now, we're sold out for about a year. 140 people a month we can treat, and we're sold out for a year. So we are just doing what we can to meet demand. We have another house coming online in Mexico in January, and we have our first European location opening in January in Malta. Malta is an island just south of Sicily in the Mediterranean. It's its own country. It's a few islands, and we have two physicians there that we've been working with for a number of years. This incredible couple, Amir and Emily, and they are pivoting their lives towards having an Ambio location in Malta. So we'll be able to take up to 6 people at a time there. It's right on the Mediterranean, this house that we've got for that. It's got a swimming pool, incredible views, incredible weather. So we are going to open up to take reservations in that place starting around November 5th, I believe. In Waves and War, as I mentioned, will be on Netflix starting November 3rd. It's a really good movie. They use animation to animate some of the battle scenes as well as the Ibogaine journey itself.
Nice.
And I've seen a lot of movies that try and put psychedelic visions into film, and they're kind of lackluster. This is not at all. It does a really good job of actually painting what an Ibogaine experience is like for someone. So that'll be November 3rd on Netflix. And we are on Instagram at Ambio Life Sciences. We have a website, ambio.life. I'm saying the word ambio a lot. What does ambio mean? For one, we came up with it through a branding exercise with an old next door neighbor of mine in Vancouver. We realized we needed a really good name for this company that we were building. And the first list of names didn't really resonate with us. The second list of names, Ambio was on there, I think, as the second one. And we feel as though, and this was the branding exercise, what it brought out of us is Ambio is the place where science meets spirituality. And the word ambio has the am in it, which is the spiritual side. The burning bush said to Moses, I am that I am. The burning bush also happened to be acacia, and acacia happens to have DMT in it. And that I am realization comes when you do DMT or 5-MeO-DMT. So the am, and then it's got the bio, kind of the biology. So we feel like ambio is where science meets spirituality. The A and the O, the alpha and the omega, and that comes together to be kind of our registered trademark. And then ambio rhymes with cambio, change in Spanish, and we have a lot of change that happens. Ambio kind of rhymes with ambience, the set and setting during a psychedelic journey. And then a year or so down the road, somebody said, hey, do you know what ambio means? I'm like, we just made it up. No, it's a Latin word, and it means to circle around.
Wow.
And that's exactly what we do at Ambio as well.
That's badass.
It's pretty cool, right?
I think everything was meant to happen the way it is.
Absolutely.
So real quick, I know there's going to be people listening to this like, I want in. You've already listed the website. We'll put that in the link in the description for the podcast. But real quick, what is this going to cost people if they don't have any money? What are their options?
There are nonprofits that support veterans and first responders. The veterans nonprofits are vetsolutions.org. That's for Special Forces veterans. Amber and Marcus started that, as I mentioned before. 343fund.org is for first responders, started by a wonderful woman named Angela Scudin. And that's actually my primary reason for being in Austin right now, is there's a fundraiser for that tomorrow night. And Heroic Hearts Project has been sending us people. That's another nonprofit for veterans. Songs for Soldiers is another nonprofit that's been sending veterans to us.
Do you do clients, civilians that sponsor a veteran to come in?
Yeah, we've had for sure lots of
because that's how I did mine.
Other people. Yeah,
I had a very generous rich guy, like rich businessman, that he had so much trauma in his own personal life that he wanted to do the event, but they had a rule: you can only do it if you sponsor a veteran that can't afford it. And so he sponsored 3 guys along with himself, and we all got to do it together. Cool. And that guy to this day will still reach out to me because he loves doing these. And he's like, "Hey, you want to do another one? You want to do it?" And I'm like,
right on.
I love this stuff, but I don't want to do it all the time like you know?
Cool. And then anyone can come in. I think that's important to recognize too. Anyone who feels the call to this medicine should do this medicine. It's not just for first responders. It's not just for tip of the spear veterans. It's for anybody that feels called and wants to overcome wherever they're at. I think Ibogaine's very good at getting people from -10 to 0. -10 might be a severe heroin addiction, to 0. It's also really good at getting people from 0 to +10. So it's great for optimization as well. And then the price tag is anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000, depending on whether you're a veteran or first responder. We've got a better price.
In pesos?
Yeah, I wish. That's for the 5-day program, and then the detox program is longer, so it's anywhere from 10 to sometimes 21 or even 30 days, depending on what people are coming off of, and that's basically $1,000 a day for that program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Trevor, thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate you. I'm so glad you guys reached out and you came on.
Thank you,
I'm
Shawn.
glad we became friends.
Yeah, me too.
And let's do it again soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?